If you're wondering why the falls, this is the Princess Louise waterfall. One of its main branch here in the Orleans district of Ottawa. If you're wondering why it's not near as frozen, the water is not near as frozen over as in the clip that'll be for this, is because I'm filming the main portion of this video on a different day. Same with the one that'll be at the end of this video. The camera is slightly slanted because my tripod is jammed into the snow. Underneath just an adjacent rock, as best as I could, well, set it up. I'll start off this video by saying, I mentioned in my reiterating my goals for the coming year, this year, video, that I had unfortunately lost the second job that I had gained here in Ottawa at the Chinese-Taiwanese fusion themed restaurant that specialized in the Chinese portion, making Szechuan and Cantonese style dishes. But in the time from having recorded the last video to now, I have gained another job, a restaurant job, working at a small Italian-Canadian themed restaurant. Mainly aesthetically, it's just culturally more Italian themed, but we mainly serve Canadianized food. But sadly, a problem also arose with that, as I was hired on as just a dishwasher, and my employer told me the last day that I worked there, which was by now about, well, on Monday, last Monday, that they think that I've greatly improved since my first day there, and they actually can see that I'm trying and wanted to keep me employed. They wanted to keep me on, but unfortunately, and kind of annoying a bit that they didn't tell me this at first, but maybe just lapsed in their memory and they just forgot. They already had a dishwasher who had been put on leave because they had contracted COVID-19, and legally they couldn't fire them, and also just from their own ethics they didn't want to. They didn't desire to fire them, which is absolutely understandable. But they thought that they would be gone for quite a few months, quite a long period of time, but they ended up calling in and saying they were actually feeling a lot better and wanted to come back. And according to my employer, they don't need 2 dishwashers at one time. So my paycheck will be ready this Sunday, and they just said, I have your number, so if there's anything I can find, I will try and have you come in when it's most convenient for you and for me, but it most likely will not be full-time, only part-time. Up until that point, the few days that I had held it, I had been working full-time. So that sucks. And I didn't protest. I didn't put up any sort of... I didn't disagree with it. I, of course, want that person to keep their job. It was just, unfortunate. But, what a coincidence, and good news. On that exact same day, when walking back to where I had been staying here in Orleans, primarily, after my shift, I got a call from another restaurant on the exact same road that this Italian-Canadian themed restaurant and bar is located, and they were wondering if I was still looking for anything, if I needed a position. And I said yes, and they're looking for someone who can work 5 days a week. And I said yes, I absolutely would greatly love that. So yeah, tomorrow I'm gonna try out with that. It's a Northern Indian themed restaurant, specializing in mainly Northern Indian cultural dishes, cuisines. I'll also state just quickly that looking back on my videos, haven't had time to fully watch any of them full through, but I want to state for my second Too Much Talking Twink video that I made while still living with my parents in Toronto, I retract a lot of points I made in that video. I don't retract the the point that I was trying to get across with the video, at least as of right now, but I retract many things I said in terms of examples I brought up. For the point that I was talking about for the entire video. I'll talk about that at a different point. There's a woodpecker over there. Nice. Anyway, point of this video. It's just a continuation of the video I made titled, "Are you not just doing the same thing? I'm not killing myself until I find out." It's just a continuation of that. That's it. And why am I filming it in front of some suburban waterfalls? Because fuck it, why not? Why the hell not? I said in my third part of Exploring Ottawa, where I first showed these swallows, that I was going to try and come back here at points while staying here in Ottawa. So, yeah. But in a bit of a different fashion, I guess, to that video, even though I feel I articulated myself or what I was trying to get across better than I ever have before, I feel I can be even more specific. So for this one, I'm specifically going to be relating to the theme of how life is absolutely 100% by its nature contradicting. I'm gonna actually give examples of people, specific people, with this video. Because, again, why the hell not? That might actually further help my point. The other one, I made it because I felt I finally had the ability to fully express the essence of my existential immorality crisis. I felt I did. So, yeah, I'm just gonna do the same thing while I, just picked up a fistful of, this is packing snow, and I've just made this big snowball, so I'm just gonna build a snow person. Why not, while I talk? Why not? So, the first example I'm going to bring up is that of a YouTuber and TikToker who I greatly enjoy a lot of their content. I don't watch them on TikTok, but here on YouTube, because I don't have TikTok. Who I've mentioned before at points in my videos, mainly in the social constructs aren't innately problematic, and should we see capitalism as just a form of fascism outright. Sun Michaud. They're a teacher, or he's a teacher at Harvard University in America, the United States, and he specializes. He's a linguist and specializes in teaching philology and phonology, just linguistics in general, but more specifically in relation to the American language of Gallaghici, in relation to the Gallaghici ethnic group that primarily inhabits a small corridor of the eastern coast of the United States. And on his channel, he mainly speaks about their culture, cultural traditions, history, how they've descended from primarily Central and, well, mainly Western African and I believe as well Central African ethnic groups, mainly around Sierra Leone, Ghana, Ivory Coast, Guinea, Burkina Faso, Togo, things of the sort. And he puts in a fair share of comedy into a lot of his work. And I think a lot of it is bloody hilarious. And he's actually helped educate me on things that I was ignorant towards, and that I, despite my own research of geography and culture, globally had no clue to. And I thank him for that. But there's a bit of a problem. How am I going to word this? Okay. I have noticed, and this isn't what I would have considered before not being in and of itself a bad thing. But unfortunately, how Sun Michaud sometimes presents himself in his videos, I'm sorry to say, can come across as quite narcissistic. Not even just being confident, which is commonplace amongst a lot of black culture, is our higher prevalence of confidence in terms of that regard, self-love. But to an extent, for him at least, of overconfidence. Now, looking back on Sun's content, how he's mainly presented himself in years before, as he's actually been on YouTube for a very, very long time, I believe almost 16 years, maybe fully 16 years. Obviously, I'm not in his immediate life. In any of these people that I'm going to mention, I'm obviously not in their immediate lives. As a point I brought up in my Too Much Talking Twink, my second Too Much Talking Twink video about idolization and idealization, with artists or anyone just in general that you somewhat admire, you enjoy what they make, their points that they bring up, and commentary and things of the sort. You obviously can't fully know everything about their lives through a parasocial relationship like this. But from what I've seen just through the camera lens, his content, I wouldn't call him a narcissist, having narcissistic personality disorder. Does he have a bit more hefty narcissistic traits? Maybe. But I'll say I don't think the way he comes across in terms of how he personifies his cognitive thoughts and behaviors, or his personality in his videos, well, I don't think he means to come off that way. I see a lot of, when looking through his comments section, and even he's brought up the fact himself, people have criticized him in some regard for being more confident, or more, I guess, certain, maybe overly certain of what he's saying. But I remember he had, I forget which short it was, but I can't recall it right now, but where someone called him the definition of a narcissist. I disagree with that. But at the base of the bottom. From what I've seen, I don't think he intends to come off that way. Why is he doing a bunch of over editing in his videos, and also being very overly, I guess, well, not overly, just sarcastic enough in his videos, presenting it in a very flashy way? I don't know, maybe he just thinks that's just what you do, or that sort of thing. I don't know. I don't know. But I can, well, at least from what I've seen so far, I can say I don't think he means to. Will say, in my opinion, he does respond way too much to, like, online criticism in his comment sections. I really do think he responds way too much to, like, way too many of them, which tells me that he is very much heavily, like, putting it, I know the argument that he's trying to make with them, but it also comes off, I'm not saying you shouldn't focus on them and take, like, what the people are saying in the comments in to reflect upon it. I'm just saying that, well, with every single thing that comes up in his comments, son, you don't have to make a response to every single one. You really don't. because that does come off as, like, very, well, it comes off as being very insecure about, like, your, I'll say your worldviews or your sense of self, but I think I'm going to stop talking on that point before I say something ignorant myself. I might not have the best wording right now to articulate what I'm trying to say with that, but anyway, his more narcissistic traits are not the point, not the point of why I'm bringing him up. The main point, at least. This is about contradictions. So, as I mentioned, he often talks about just different socio-political or socio-cultural topics within his videos on YouTube and the ones that are on TikTok that he's also uploaded to YouTube. Mainly pertaining to black culture and black biracial culture as well. And systematic racial problems, societal prejudice and stigma, and alienation towards black culture. And also more specifically Gullah Geechee culture. But I want to point out some responses that he's made where, well, there are things with him and all the people that I'm going to bring up, they rub me the wrong way. To start, I will say, he made a video about how, and right, as far as I'm concerned, rightfully so, water flow got very, very violent. Rightfully so, to some commenter on something where somebody was moving to a certain area of a city and they were talking about, someone was commenting to them about to stay away basically from the black neighborhoods or black or Latino neighborhoods where they keep an eye out because there's a lot of pesky crime. And he made a response video with some comedic undertones in it, basically saying, no, we're not doing this. Don't generalize the entire black and Latino populace of this community. Because that is quite literally subtle racism. Don't keep an eye, basically don't keep an eye on people of the certain skin color or cultural racial background or ethnicity. If the area just, you could have just said keep an eye out, but just keep your wits about yourself in the area for anyone. But no, they chose, the person commenting chose specifically to single out and generalize Latinos and blacks. And some show response to it, calling out the generalization. Which, as far as I'm concerned, he was absolutely right in that video. Absolutely right. And what I'm about to say next doesn't negate his point, at least as far as I'm concerned, but there is hypocrisy to it, is all I'm going to say. I don't know when this next... After this video that I'm talking, this short was made, he made a skit where he was making eggs as if a loved one of his had passed away. And I thought it was a very good skit. Very well done. But then, apparently, there was some people in his comments who were advocating for, I guess I'll call it, what would be a good word? Extremist veganism, I guess? Someone of the vegan community someone who was vegan was basically calling him a barbarian for cooking eggs. Now, I thought it was something else. I obviously don't agree with the stance that this person was trying to come at him. Like, trying to attack him in terms of his morality. At least as far as my morality was concerned. But in the response video he made to that, he said something along the lines of, when he was responding to it, he was talking about how they were attacking him, or how they were framing him, I guess I'll call it. And he said, this is why most people view veganism as a very unsavory movement or dietary lifestyle. And he later said, I'm not saying obviously all vegans, but let's just say if 80% of veganists were I guess you could call them vegans were if 80% of them committed arson and burnt down people's homes, I think most people would be in favor of, well, people would have very anti-veganism viewpoints. So, I'm just gonna say that right now. Son Michaud, that is generalization. And you use the point of not all vegans, despite you use the point of not all vegans for that argument. Despite you not really caring for and rightfully so, I would say in many regards, but, no. Why am I defending that? I said I was gonna stop this. Yeah, no, really, it's not defendable, actually. Why do I keep saying this? Having the stance of the whole not all white people thing whenever someone who may be subtly racist or have a subtle cognitive bias brings up the not all white people stance, or in relation to the generalization of referring to a certain community that you shouldn't be generalizing when people take the stance of not all black people or not all Latinos or not all any other ethnic group of the world. rightfully so. So that's contradictory. As well as the fact it's contradictory, as I kind of brought up in my social constructs are not innately problematic video, to say that people of different ethnic groups other than, well, what would be considered white-oriented groups can't be racist or racially prejudiced. They absolutely can. You've often used the argument that race is not just about skin color, which is, as far as I'm concerned, absolutely true. And that cultural traditions and backgrounds are heavily tied to race and ethnicity as well. Ethnic background and heritage. So, but you use the stance as though by that notion, no one of any other racial background can be racist or nationalist or xenophobic, have prejudice towards another ethnic group. Not even just white ethnic groups, just any ethnic group across the world. But I refute that as, by that logic, okay, if we're using the logic that in terms of racism refers to alienation or degradation of and discrimination of people based on skin color, skin tone, pigment, and cultural tradition and ethnic background, then absolutely someone of another racial group can be racist, because all those things exist with the concept of whiteness and like white ethnic groups. They also have their own cultural backgrounds if we're stemming from like European ethnic groups, like Western European, Central European, going into Eastern Europe as well, or Southwest Europe too, even into like considering like the European Mediterranean regions, then yes, they all have their own traditional social values and cultural practices as well, and it's not just in relation to and prejudice that has resulted within, let's say, Europe against other European ethnic groups has been because of said practices or traditions, or just some form of affiliation to those other nationalities or ethnicities. So by that logic, if someone of a racial group that wasn't considered a part of whiteness, like being of black culture or Hispanic culture, East Asian culture, Southeast Asian culture, Middle Eastern culture, Arab, someone being of Arab descent, or Inuit descent, or in terms of North America, Cree, Sioux, Indigenous American descent, and any others that wasn't affiliated with whiteness. If you're using that logic, like that definition to define racism, then absolutely someone of a different ethnic group could be racist, blatantly or subtly, or just non-maliciously out of pure benevolence, by that definition too, because if you're either full-blown hating on something, knowingly, like despising a certain practice of a different group, If you're despising the practice of, say, a white ethnic group, and also despising them based, say, like, on skin tone, or added on to that, then yes, absolutely. If you're using that definition of racism, then absolutely yes. Black people, Latino people, Hispanic people, Han people, Arab people, indigenous Australian, indigenous North American, Central American ethnic groups, they can all be racist as well. Absolutely. Because if you're going based on that definition, then, yeah, that prejudice exists towards them as well. Now, do I think that that prejudice from those communities most often is caused by systematic white supremacy and hierarchy of white superiority? Yep, I absolutely do. I absolutely think that most of that forms because of racial prejudice towards those groups themselves from white racial groups, but that doesn't make their prejudice not racist either, if you get what I mean. One more thing I'd like to point out in relation to Sun Michaud is how, really just how in one instance recently where he advertised merchandise of his. It's February, as you know, you may know that February is Black History Month. I feel that, yeah, quick update, I guess, to where I'm at with my morality. I don't think there should be a month for anything, like any cultural tradition or like celebration. I think it should just be universally recognized. So, in relation to advertising the merchandise, I've been fine with how he's advertised most of his things. In my opinion, some of it can be a little bit unnecessarily overly edited, but one instance in particular, I'd say recently, for Martin Luther King Day, he made a video with two other people. I don't know who they are in relation to him, but just talking about merchandise of his and about how giving a short little dialogue about how systemic and systematic racial problems have, well, destroyed the heritage of many, sociologically. And it was on Martin Luther King Day, and he specifically addressed that. But it was still at the end of the day, plug for his own merch. Which, I'm not gonna lie, that made me really uncomfortable, because that kind of defeats the whole purpose of a lot of things that Martin Luther King stood against. One being classism in terms of like corporate profit. And it also was that was very egotistical. Like, very. Now, don't worry. I'm not just gonna pick on Sun Michaud for this video, or for this point specifically, as shifting away from Sun Michaud, or at the very least for a bit. I'm gonna call out John Green on something similar, well, for him doing the exact same thing that Sun Michaud did in terms of plugging merch. In fact, actually, I love a lot of John Green's content. And Hank Green. I greatly appreciate a lot of the things they've done on SciShow, and SciShow Psych especially. And with their own separate channels. The Vlog Brothers, I think, yeah, Vlog Brothers is their shared channel. And their own separate channels. But, and again, similar to Sun Michaud, I don't think John Green intentionally meant to do this. But I'm just going to say it felt very manipulative. So, recently, John Green, okay, so John Green and Hank Green have been on, let's say, SciShow Psych for quite a bit, talking about psychology and psychological things relating to neuroscience in many ways. Neurology, too. And they've also spoken about sociological issues and in relation to psychosociological issues, into things that are of people being very manipulative and being overly self-centered, and also relation to talks of philosophy, more altruistic philosophies, I guess I'd say. However, John Green the reason this rubbed me the wrong way, John Green made a video recently that, where it was a plug for, well, no, maybe he wanted to actually, like, talk about the issue as well, and then also plug his merch, or it was just a plug for the merch, but in a way he thought he would do that is by addressing the obvious eco-political issues in relation to capitalism and corporate commercialism. He basically starts off the short by saying, like, advertising is used by corporations all the time to basically manipulate the public and convince the public that they need, like, their product. They need it. They just, like, telling them in a basically like a subtle form of gaslighting what you need. You need this, you want this, your life is basically trying to make the audience member believe that their life is incomplete without it. Or like the customer, the person that they're, I guess, trying to pander to. He fully addressed that, and he like made it as if he started off the video as if it was like a talking point, like he was making commentary on the subject, like just solely for that, about how advertising companies for mega corporations and even moderate corporations, or even small businesses, depending on if they've been indoctrinated into the capitalist belief or not, how most of their purpose is basically, or how many of them operate, is just to manipulate the consumer into believing that they need the thing, they need the product. And how the capitalist ideology, in terms of free market, fuels that need, in pandering to a, I guess, egoistic philosophy. And then, smack at the end of the video, he plugs his coffee brand. And I know he addressed in the video, like, and this is gonna seem like very like shameless and things. I think he said it's gonna seem very like shameless to me right now, and I know I just talked about like how advertising is used, but I would really appreciate if you went and bought purchased my coffee. We ethically source it. We try and redistribute our wealth to our workers, employ them fairly, things of the sort. All good things, obviously. What I would have considered to be good things, morally, to do. I'm sorry, John, that doesn't, I can't help but feel, but that seemed manipulative. Like, that came off as manipulation. Like, and I don't think at all that well, from what I know of you, obviously from my own research and just your content and things of the sort, or things people have said about you, I don't want to make the claim that you intended, like, to manipulate with that. But that's what it came off as. You did, it really doesn't matter to me, like, people may defend him in that regard, saying, like, oh, but it's supposed to be ironically comedic and things of the sort, like, that the absurdity of that. No. It really doesn't. I don't honestly care if it was done even out of a sense of irony, like, oh, the irony of that sort of thing. It's something that he, as far as I'm concerned right now, chose to do. And, like, that, not even really in a comedic sense, as he was talking about, he just addressed the fact that we know in the modern day so many corporations get on a very performative trend of, like, trying. I especially take issue with that, as so many corporations try to appeal to, like, the modern day progressive leftist, like, moral values. We're seeing a lot of that, and all of that is complete manipulation. It's bullshit. They don't care one bit, as far as I'm concerned, about that. So to see John Green actually do that, yeah, I can't help but feel that that was very manipulative. And I don't think he intended to, but it was a form of manipulation, as far as I'm concerned. Plugging his brand of coffee in that way. So that's contradictory. Go with another person. It's part of the leftist political commentary community on YouTube. Big Joel, or as he's known as on his second channel, Little Joel. I greatly enjoy a lot of his content, but there was a video he made at some point, I believe it was last month or so, on his second channel, Little Joel, responding to, or just talking about a tweet that climate activist, environmentalist Greta Thunberg had made in response to the absolute insulistic, misogynist, narcissistic sociopath, Andrew Tate. And I know Andrew responded to like Greta with something like, "Hello, Greta. I am a multi-millionaire, successful business guru who runs a very successful cam modeling studio, and also like my free online hustle college program, you know, all the typical alpha male bullshit sexism there is. And she tweeted back like something hashtag small dick energy. And then Big Joel, or sorry, Little Joel, he commented on the fact that so many people were talking about the fact that, like, trying to find the deeper meaning to, like, what, like, trying to say that Greta Thunberg meant that, there were people commenting that she meant, like, this behavior gives off as if you're insecure about your member. But Big Joel / Little Joel was saying, no, like, she just found it funny as far as he's concerned. Why are we assigning this bigger meaning to things? Like, accept the reality of the real world that guys with small dicks are considered very, like, insecure and things of the sort. And he said, like, yeah, maybe this opens up a larger conversation as to how we treat people culturally with small penises. I know, this is a bit of an absurd conversation, kind of. But let's stop pretending people, like, have some sense of reality. Like, let's wake up to the real world. Okay, so I'm not going to focus on the, like, whole small dick thing. That's not the essence of what I find contradictory. What I find contradictory is the fact that Joel would say something like that. Just accept the fact that this is the real world. Really? I seem to recall, Joel, you making some videos in the past. Specifically in relation to, one, the wasteland of Jordan Peterson, where you made a lot of very good points against him. Dr. Jordan Peterson, the clinical psychologist and con artist, who I absolutely think has Machiavellian personality disorder. Well, either Machiavellian personality disorder or histrionic personality disorder, but he definitely has attention-seeking personality disorder. He's incredibly manipulative. But I'll get into him in a... no, I'll bring him up here. I'll talk about that in a sec. But specifically in that video, Joel, you talked about how he was comparing the video that Peterson did about comparing the functionality of the eco-political ideology of socialism to and then using cupcakes as an example, as an analogy for socialism or communism, in a sense. And he brought up something along the lines of if you have an equalized, if you have one flavor of cupcake, life would be bland. If you have a variety of flavors of cupcakes, life would be full of fulfillment and enjoyment and all the other bullshit that most of the alt-right tries to come up with to cast socialism or communistic economic beliefs as if life would be completely flavorless with it, or anarchistic beliefs in the sort, or a libertarian belief, as if life would be complete chaos and there would be no thrill to life. Typical bullshit that is rampant. And Joel specifically said, "I'm sorry, I don't think that's fair." He was criticizing mainly, from what I can recall, Peterson's take on, his whole keeping up with the status quo and how the real world works. Preparing your child for the real world. How to make them behave properly and things of the sort. It gives in his, also bullshit, abusive teachings for, how to raise young men of the sort. So, Snow Person is getting hefty. So, I hope that doesn't start to flood. I have my back right to little pond that forms, I guess, or water section here below the falls. So you criticizing Peterson for the whole, ow, my fucking knee, ow, that was a rock. Oh, that didn't feel good. Anyway, you criticizing Peterson for his oversimplification of socialism and saying that that's not very fair, And then later going on to say, like, in terms of relation to Greta Thunberg and Andrew Tate, just, this is how the real world is. Just stop trying to make it something it isn't. That's contradictory. Very. I recall you also saying in one video, like, if you were being honest, that you like the attention of just making videos, which is incredibly attention-seeking, and, well, that leads me to believe as well with how much you upload on certain things, that you're trying to be... That comes off a bit like you're, in a histrionic sense, that you're trying to sound more profound than you actually are. And I'm not saying this in any way to... Okay, if you don't actually believe, like, what you're saying, then in my opinion, yes, your morality is terrible. Your morals suck. Please self-reflect. But I'm not trying to make this like a hit piece on you or anything. Not really with any of these people that I'm talking. Well, hit piece is a very odd way to phrase it, but whatever. I don't know. I'm just calling out contradictory bullshit by this point. Contrary shit. Who else? Start making the snow person's abdomen. Oh, let's go with this. I'm gonna bring up another political commentary YouTuber, the Speech Prof. I don't know his real name actually, but he's a university professor of, I think he's also a linguist like Sun Michaud. But, he makes commentary videos, very good ones, here on YouTube, and on TikTok. And he frequently comments mainly in relation to, patriarchy, or patriarchal sociological problems. In relation to male dominance in many societies of the world, but I guess mainly in regard he's speaking to the United States. And as far as I'm concerned, he's absolutely right about the majority of what he says. How femininity is demeaned, seen as weak when it's not, or what is associated as feminine gender expressions or personas in terms of traits. The inferiorization of women, trans women as well, by much of modern culture, things of the sort. And as well, how it hurts and harms cis men, just men in general. The male gender. How that mindset, that belief, is not only sociopathic, but how it's a detriment to the male gender as well. However, at points in some of his videos, I remember in one recently, he has made the claim that he doesn't want to, and he's not trying to, speak on behalf of women or women's issues. Yes, you are. I know I said something similar, and I actually corrected this in the description of my second Too Much Talking Twink video, when I was talking about the Gus Johnson Adelina Sabrina issue that I wanted to comment on, because I guess that was my egotistical tendencies coming out. I said my wording was bad. I said that I wasn't trying to speak on behalf of women's problems in terms of health. What I meant to say was, in terms of gynecological problems, I feel I have enough knowledge to speak on things that I find are problematic and how women are treated in society. But I meant gynecological problems in relation to medical. But in terms of what he was talking about, just women's issues in general, even though that's literally what you're doing. You're literally speaking on behalf of women about their problems and about how psychological patriarchy and toxic masculinity, how it affects men. But that relates to the female gender. So that is, in a sense, speaking on behalf of them. And the same I can even also say again for Sun Michaud in relation to his talks about black women and the female gender in the black community. You are speaking on behalf of them just by simply bringing up an issue that pertains to them. I do the same thing. I say it's good enough and immediately when I fucking sip. That was a damn good clip. Oh, round 2. They still just pertain to things universally across the board. Because I hear this a lot on the left of the political spectrum. There's a lot of people who say that, here's a contradictory thing. A lot of people in political activism will tell people to not hold an opinion on things, but yet simultaneously be allies and aid in helping, like, this cause, this ideology. The right does it. There are people on the right who also do this, and centrists, but I predominantly see this troublingly in my stance on the left. The reason I find that so disturbing is because that's encouragement of a herd mentality. You can't get involved in something if you actually morally want to, like, as far as I'm concerned, okay, well, I think people know my stance on, like, not following in, like, a herd mentality. And encouraging critical and analytic thought. If you can't tell someone to get involved with something, but then simultaneously tell them to not hold an opinion on it and just shut the fuck up. You can't. If you're gonna tell them to, like, not hold an opinion on something, tell them to not get involved. Or not even be allies in aiding in the thing. Because as far as I'm concerned, to aid in that thing, you need to hold, I would want you to hold, like, some sort of stance on the issue. And too often I see that, especially in modern years, in leftist groups. And I think a lot of people are catching on to that as well. Really just in daily life, but some people on YouTube as well. It's a contradictory narrative. Who else can I bring up? Let's go with, okay, actually, let's go with, Dwayne from Dry Creek Wrangle School. I talked about him in the other video I made pertaining to this 2 videos ago. I linked one of his videos that I greatly enjoy that pertain to engaging in critical thought. And I greatly enjoy his content. Yet, in one of his videos, he talked about, I think it was called Control That Temper, where he talked about aggression issues that he had dealt with for many years in relation to things regarding his diet, having high blood pressure, causing his mood to shift frequently, causing raised aggression, which obviously can happen in relation to it. And he talked about in that video about how he thinks most people, including himself, people need to get their tempers under control and things that make them agitated and angered. Basically, not let your ego run too high, start running too high. He specifically used the words, "We think we're all that." Most of us think we're just that person. We're that big of a person. Which, as far as I'm concerned, he's absolutely right in that regard to most of the world's populace. But literally in that exact same video, he said something very hypocritical, very contradictory. And that being, he said, "Now I love my wife. I love my wife dearly, and I'm telling you right now, in relation to my wife, if someone was to criticize her in any way or like spout any form of anger towards her, have any sort of disdain towards her, there will be a verbal confrontation from me, and then there will be a physical confrontation. I don't care, basically. So I'll resort to physical violence, or I will get aggressive and agitated if you start criticizing my wife." That's hypocritical. Literally, you just said that we need to learn to control our tempers, get them under control. Did you just mean like everything except me in that regard? Like, are there specific things that you think you should get angry for, or what? Like, also in terms of criticism towards your wife, and this isn't me at all, I know nothing about your wife. As of right now, I know nothing. Did you mean like what about what could be considered helpful or positive criticism of things that she's doing that aren't really the greatest to herself or someone else? Do you mean that as well? And then there would be a physical and verbal confrontation? Because if so, again, that's hypocrisy. Broke it again. Well, fuck that. An alarm of mine went off and it stopped recording. Great. For the sake of the fact that I can't really think of any specifics for anyone else that I wanted to bring up right now, let's go with two individuals who I will make a video on at some point, and how they're both, in my opinion, hypocrites and manipulative. Jordan Peterson and Zizek. The Canadian clinical psychologist and philosophical analyst, Peterson, and the Slovenian psychoanalyst, philosophical analyst, and philosopher. That's honestly getting a little concerning. Whatever. So I'm only going to bring up one point with these two right now, because I want to make a video on how I think. Okay, I've never had any big fondness towards Jordan Peterson. As far as I'm concerned, in the past, I'd think 1 minute he'd say something that I genuinely did agree with. Overall, thought it was a valid enough point. But then within like the span of like 14 seconds, he'd say something completely idiotic and contrary. But now I regard him as a pseudo-intellectual. I regard him as an intellectual, and he knows what the fuck he's doing in terms of like his manipulative tactics. He knows it. I have empathy for him. Feel sorry for him, but he knows it. Much the same, Zizek does the same thing. Whereas, unlike Peterson, I actually did greatly enjoy a lot of like Zizek's talks and points that he's brought up over the years, and I actually do agree with a lot. Still agree with a lot of the things that he says, that he brings up. Problem is, he doesn't believe in them. He doesn't believe in his like his philosophies for shit. Same as what I said about Peterson, he could have either Machiavellian personality disorder or histrionic personality disorder as well, but he is definitely attention-seeking. He's egotistical personality disorder. I'll talk about both him and Peterson more in a separate video, but I'll bring up something that both of them claim to not be, and that is they both say that they're anti-moralists in a sense, basically. Like I don't think Peterson has like outright said that he's an anti-moralist, but he holds a stance of anti-moralism as he's criticized people for, like, pushing their morality onto others. Even though he does literally the exact same fucking thing. But Zizek has, like, outright said, at least as far as I can recall in interviews, that, no, I am not, my phone's dying, I am not a moralist in any sense at all. Yes, you are. People really don't he claims he's not a moralist, and yet he does an interview, coincidentally enough, also relating to the environmental activist Greta Thunberg, claiming that he likes her dogmatic approach. I'm not personally a fan of it, but he likes her dogmatic approach to, like, climate issues, like saying, no, this has to be dealt with now. Like, and he also brought up the point, like, if someone was claiming, in terms of rape, like, trying to bring up a point of, like, if someone liked it or not, can we not just universally agree that they're an idiot? Okay, well, Peterson, God, they're so similar. I'll just use their names interchangeably. Zizek, you're a moralist. Morality is what people value as being right and wrong, what they view as being ethically right to do and ethically wrong to do, what they value, what they believe should be done in a scenario or not, what they think is more beneficial to do and more detrimental to do overall, and following, like, a moral code based on that stance, if they actually truly believe it. That's morality. And you simply literally claiming that no, you should not be doing this is morals. So you're inflicting a moral stance onto someone by saying, like, we could universally agree that someone is an idiot, not saying that he's wrong about what someone is saying, that someone's claiming that rape somehow, like, the victim would enjoy it. That's absolutely idiotic and incredibly encroaching. But I'm talking about in terms of his stance for anti-moralism. Peterson's the same. Peterson, I know he, like, in one interview, someone asked him a question, and, like, he said, I don't like this moralistic stance that you're taking, like, this higher superiority of morals. And yet he literally, how he got famous is literally he held a protest outside of UFT, University of Toronto, one of their branches in the downtown area of Toronto, I think. That's literally because they were trying to ban, or at least they were trying to enforce not misgendering someone under any circumstances, like trying to police, like, someone's freedom of speech. Yeah, shitty policy, shitty. They shouldn't have enforced that, in my opinion. Their freedom of speech doesn't make misgendering someone right at all, but still freedom of speech. Yet Peterson holding a protest, you are in damning the university for that, saying, no, this is wrong, this is problematic, this is immoral. Literally, you're using all the words except immoral, unethical. You're using all the words just except, well, you're subtly claiming morality. And, like, for a second I didn't know why you were falling. Leaves are just falling off of the path, right in my eye. This might be spruce, not pine. Never mind. Spruce trees. What's going on there? That's morality. So, there was a video I saw titled, I haven't watched it yet, but someone made a video, just the title alone I agree with, that Jordan Peterson is everything he criticizes. Yeah, he absolutely is. Same with Slovaj Zizek. I do think, though, that there is more, like, substance. There's actual... Zizek actually does make good points to things. He actually does have a lot of, like, value, I think, in what he's saying. But I don't think he believes a lick of what comes out of his mouth. He just says it to garner himself fame, basically. Oh my god, what is happening with my phone? Holy shit. Get off. Come on. Come on. Yeah, this is dying. Oh god. Okay. You move back a tad bit. Hold on a sec. Okay. See how well that holds. Okay, I'm gonna have to finish the little snow person after I wrap this up. Point being, all these people that I'm bringing up, I mentioned in the last video that I'm crafting together hypotheses, theories of mine, that most of them I wholeheartedly believe by this point. I've reflected and thought carefully, and I wholeheartedly believe them. And same with the implementations that I feel are needed in neuroscience, as well as sexology. I also think that there should be some things recognized and implemented into the studies of two things specifically in sociology, which I'll also bring up whenever I make a video about those things that I'm proposing. Maybe some of these people, in terms of their memories, have, like me, have memory I feel, yeah, many of them do have memory problems in most regards, and they may just say hypocritical things if they don't recall what they said before, but, well, still an issue, I guess, in some stance. Even that is contradictory in and of itself, because I said, as one of my goals for this year and going forward along these travels of mine, I'm going to try, when I can, to not self-actualize. Try and reaffirm my sense of self, my ego, as much as possible. But that in and of itself is self-actualization in some way. Quite literally, you literally just saying, I want, I feel, me, is self-actualization. Like, I need this, or things of the sort. So, well, that can't be avoided, but I'm still going to try as hard as possible, even with the knowledge I have now in relation to these theories that I'm concocting. Still going to try and not self-actualize in situations where I can avoid it. Thing is, as I've said before, too many people are way too overly certain of their, like, beliefs and identities with themselves. They're far too certain of things. Far too certain. I'm going to link a video in the description by a political commentator who I greatly enjoy. He does a lot of fantastic videos, called Foreign Man in a Foreign Land. Ransford James, I believe his name is, his full name. Ransford James. R. James. He made a video about the cultural appropriation in relation to the black spiritualistic religion of Voodooism, and it was originally going to be apparently the video was just originally going to be about in relation to that, but it ended up being more of a talk about how he felt he may have been wrong about religion. And he specifically said something in the video in relation to the left wing of the political spectrum, the political circle, talking about how, well, saying along the lines of, for as much as we love dismantling binaries, we sure do love talking in them. We sure do love using them for our own stances. And he's absolutely right about that. Now let me pick on the right for that. Similar relation. For as much as the right wing of the political circle loves saying to the left that oh, you're unrealistic, you think in unrealistic terms, you don't know the real world, you people you think the economic issues and governmental issues are so easily solved, that it's, sharing is caring is like a redistribution of wealth has never universally worked. Yeah, it has in the past. I can point to instances of that, but I'm not going to get into that here. Or like, oh, people are more complex than assigning labels to things. Yeah, for as much as the right wing loves saying stuff like that, you sure do love, like, for as much as you love saying that we oversimplify things, you sure do love oversimplifying everything in relation to economics, gender, sexuality, race, culture, government, saying that women should follow traditionalist rules. Oh, I can't be racist because I don't judge people based on the color of their skin, or I don't see race, or you just get your fill, get your bag in terms of capitalist, just work hard, prove your worth, kiss up to your employer, and work your way up through the economic class system, and everything will be fine and hunky-dory, and you'll be living a swell life. Or, I'm fine with gay people, just don't be acting gay around me. That sort of thing. You sure do love or like nope, there's only two genders. There's only two genders and nothing else can change my mind. There's male and female. There's nothing else, even though literal genealogy and endocrinology have proven otherwise, and there's literal evidence of 71 different physiological genders. And in terms of how we express ourselves with gender identity, there's proof in terms of traits we assign to gender that there are a multitude of people who express themselves differently. Yeah, there's just two. Like, For as much as you love saying that we oversimplify stuff, you sure do it a lot yourself. You sure do oversimplify a lot of things yourself. And the center of the political, well, the smack center, I guess we'll say, the political circle, I guess, is what I'm calling it now. Centrists. For as much as you like saying, well, I don't want to hold a stance one way or another. No, I don't want to hold a stance. Just, I see this argument and I see that argument. Well, you sure are passive at points to a lot of morally deplorable, or what I would have considered to be morally deplorable things. So, bottom line with all this is, life is contradictory. It is. I don't have any good solution to that. I don't think I've heard anyone come up with an actual good solution to it. Most of it has really just sounded like bullshit to keep themselves having a meaning in life. So that's why I'm traveling the world, to find out if there's hope for things. I've come to conclusions on things, as I will say in a later video, as I'm still fleshing out those theories of mine. But, as of right now, those theories don't really provide any good conclusion to things. It's just, I feel those are the way things are. There's tangible proof that these are how things are. Go from there. And I'll go from there. So, yeah. Let me finish building this snow person. And then, get a shot of them. Alright. Hold on a second. Alright. They're done. I'm not gonna lie. They look fucking atrocious. But, well, got a lot of thickness in that bottom half, so we still keep them warm. Well, yeah. This was something. Yeah, I'm gonna go before that starts to cool up anymore. Okay. Morning. So I thought I was just gonna end the video off with me having finished building the snow person, because I really couldn't think of anything else to add to what I was trying to say. But from yesterday into evening of yesterday until now, I actually did think of some things, and I wanted to just some more examples that I wanted to bring up, and then just get them across. I just woke up a few minutes ago, and right now I'm a bit frustrated because that northern Indian restaurant that I was going to be starting at today just called, and because of complication once again on my part, it will be next week instead of today. So yeah, that sucks. was, I guess, confused about something that the employer had told me, but oh well. Not much I can do about it. But anyway. A few more examples. Two more will be specific people. A YouTuber by the name of Felix Skura. I mentioned him as well, like Dwayne in the last video pertaining to this topic. He mainly talks about, well, philosophy, ideology, sociology, all that stuff. But he recently made a video, quite literally, I think, 2 days ago. Yeah, it would have been 2 days ago. Entitled, "The Indoctrination Begins the Moment You're Born," or right when you're born. Great video, as far as I'm concerned. He's absolutely right in that regard, and the point he makes there. But to just bring up contradictions, as he himself in certain videos at points seems to have acknowledged the fact that life is incredibly contradicting in and of its nature. He at points has mentioned about how he's gone off of most social media platforms entirely, of his own personal choice, and how much it's actually benefited him. And also talking about how so much of the modern world is constantly obsessed with being chronically online. Again, it's not wrong. In fact, in one of his videos, I absolutely agree with this point he makes. He said, in his belief, he believes the mass I guess I'll call it, realization of loneliness and a lot of the more depressive disorders and dissociative disorders becoming more apparent in global populaces is, well, he believes social media is not the cause of the problem, it's a symptom of it, as he specifically has said. But despite all that, in the video, which I will also link in the description, he once again brings up a point about social media. But then he quickly acknowledges, because apparently some people have talked about it in his comments, that he knows, yeah, he's using YouTube to inform people of this, which is a social media platform. The way he phrased it was, "For all you smartasses in the comments." Well, they're not exactly smartasses, because they are correct. That is contradictory. You are using a social media platform to defame the entirety of social media in a sense. So you must at the very least believe there's some benefit in it.
Another YouTuber who I've talked about before, Joey B. Tunes, does the exact same thing, except I'd actually argue that Joey's is worse. I enjoy a lot of Joey's content. Don't like every opinion he holds, obviously. If you saw the video I made on him and Illuminati. But, yeah, he does the same fucking thing. Damn the entirety of social media, yet continue to quite literally upload to a social media platform to share their content. Let's go with another one. Jimmy Robbins, a journalist YouTuber, I'll say, or just a news source YouTuber who I follow. He actually helped. In my opinion, he's a very good reporter. Far better than most, like, say, major media journalists out there. In terms of like him just sharing the news that's going on, different things, current events, mainly pertaining, I guess, to issues on YouTube, but other things as well, just on the internet. God damn. He's actually, his videos on Gus Johnson, Abilene, Sabrina, he's the one who informed me about things that I was misled on from my second Too Much Talking Doing video. But here comes the contradiction wave. He's mentioned how he feels that journalists should remain unbiased or as unbiased as possible. I believe he also has a video at the very start of his channel posing the question, when did news media become entertainment? And he's brought up this point at different intervals that you should try and remain unbiased and professional when reporting in a journalistic field. He's absolutely 100% completely biased. I'm sorry to tell you, Jimmy, you are very biased. Literally in just the subtlest ways that you talk. You, one, make very sarcastic jokes towards people in your videos, like the people that you're many times you're talking about. You've given you gave a little literal point in a video how you think that, I forget which one it was, how you basically made it, I guess, a slight joke that like pedophiles should have their dicks cut off. I disagree with you there, but anyway, you made the you've said how you feel like in relation to talking about other people, like in terms of your opinions on them as a person, that they're terrible people, that they're not the nicest person, but you feel this and this about them, that they shouldn't be not worthy of this criticism or that. Sorry to say, all that is a bias. It's a very big bias. All of it. So yeah, you're not, you don't remain unbiased, and your videos are a little drummed up for entertainment. But anyway, I want to, I guess, just a specific person, a generalized example that one that's been really irking me on in relation to my whole existential crisis and morality crisis. So often, people on the left, right, center, but even more so, more so, I would say the left of the political circle. So often we talk about alienation or the problematic issues of social and cultural alienation. I think most leftists would agree with me that cultural alienation, just really alienation in general, for I guess no solid reason, like unfounded alienation, is, well, destructive. It's problematic to different people groups, to just individuals themselves, right? Yet, for as much as people like to claim and fight against, say, systematic or systemic alienation against different people groups in, say, protest against governmental societal policies that have been put into institutions, we sure do it a lot ourselves. I can't tell you how many times like I've had a conversation with leftist friends of mine where the end result of the conversation is fuck conservatives, uh, fuck neo-Nazis, and fuck elitist corporate capitalists, kill them all, and burn their houses to the ground. I can't tell you how many times that's come up. Or feeling that all police are horrendous people, or all politicians are horrendous people, completely generalizing an entire group of people. Or in relation to centrists, that most centrists at the end of the day are completely like their points don't matter or completely invalid because of at the end of the day all they do is aid the right, which no, I'd argue against that. But for as much as people preach like social tolerance, you sure don't do it a lot at all. like from my perspective, I've actually, with how my ethics were, I may not have agreed with someone on their political beliefs and ideologies, just their philosophies in general. But as long as you weren't really, not even if you weren't really going through with it, like, as long well, as long as they weren't causing mass detriment to someone else, as far as I was concerned, I would still remain their friend, or I would still socialize with them, talk with them. From my personal perspective, I'd actually like to get to know why, in terms of philopsychological analysis, why they believe the things they believe. I have friends that could be considered more conservative. Two of them capitalists, identify as capitalists. One having heavy traits of a sociopath. And one of them I actually talked about in my Made It to Ottawa video. I brought them up as a point because it was clear to me that out of everyone, for the longest time, they're the ones that they're the one that I felt alienated around the least in a multitude of regards. This person in particular, again, capitalist, more objectivist in their philosophies, more hedonistic, transphobic, or transsexist to some degree, homophobic, uh, can be subtly racist. Yeah, they've been more tolerant of me than anyone else I've met in the longest time. Now, as far as I'm concerned, that's not an excuse for their morals and their beliefs and ideologies on the issues. I still bicker with them about it. Don't worry. Or I still, well, I did bicker with them about it. So, again, I just posed the question. Say there is someone who's more of a, I guess, neoliberal fascist belief, or just fascistic in general, if they were more neo-Nazi-esque. If you're going to be so, okay, if you're going to claim to fight against alienation or be anti-social alienation, then, well, you have to be that with everyone in that regard. Unless you have, like, or you have to specify, like, what groups can be alienated. Because clearly there are people who breach this, and but I think that some form of alienation is fine to some degree, that it is all right, and you have to acknowledge that. As far as I'm concerned, that's not good at all. Like, morally, in the slightest. But at the very least, I wish people would actually, like, realize this major contradiction, that you are essentially doing the same thing that your oppressor has done to you. which is completely socially degrade and alienate you. And you're doing the same thing to someone of the opposing side who may be more in favor of the ideology that put you there in the first place. Unfortunately, cultures do form around ideologies. I've noticed there's cultures that form around them, whether it be on the right wing, the left wing, or center. There are cultural practices that clearly form around ideology. So I'm sorry. I was on a phone call recently with a friend. We were talking about some people in relation to rightists, and I was psychoanalyzing them, and I was bringing up like why I think they are the way that they are, why they're doing what they're doing in terms of psychoanalysis, why their personalities and behavior is the way that it is. And they stopped me and they said, Cam, I really don't think you should actually be judging people this way, because I've done it for a long time. They said, I don't think you should be psychoanalyzing people that way. It really does. It's not an excuse as far as they're concerned. Like I'll use the term mental health, but it's not just in relation to mentality, but their psychological health. Why can we not just why can't we just say it doesn't matter? Like these people are just bad people. Yeah, I'm sorry, but to that friend, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard you say. Now I'm fucking done with it. That's the dumbest. Well, that's not even one of the dumbest things. I regard you as a highly intelligent person, a dear friend of mine. But that is the stupidest fucking thing I've ever heard. Like come out of your mouth. And whenever I hear anyone like say that, it's not just them. I that is one of if not the dumbest thing I've ever heard so many people say. Just again, I don't know how people can preach like we need more understanding of psychology and psychological health and neuroscience and neurology and things of the sort. I don't know how people can preach that and then all of a sudden turn around and think that horrendous people in this world don't have mass psychological health issues, disorders. I don't know how they can like preach that. I don't know how people can actually okay, you know what? For those of you who like think no, we should just call these people bad people and do nothing about it. Well, that's exactly that. It does nothing. I don't know what your argument is. They're just horrible people. Oh, whatever, leave them to rot. Like, your argument doesn't do much uh, at all. And on top of that notion, if. Okay, anyway. So those who say that, just write people off as an idiot or a douchebag or a deplorable person and just leave it at that. What happens? Tell me what are you gonna do when you're just the bad person, the the horrendous person by someone else's opinion. What happens when you call the police and, oh, you're just a bad person, and the 911 operator hangs up, or the police completely dismiss you? What happens when you go to the doctors and the doctor is just like, no, you're not a very morally oriented, well-oriented person. I don't want to treat you or perform a surgical like treatment or any sort of examination. No, you're just a bad person. So what happens when the doctor denies you service? Or the fire brigade when your house is on fire? No, you're just a bad person. We're really not going to help with this. Or after the fire, the insurance company. What happens when uh let's say somehow the insurance company has some policy where they take a look at uh your banking credit, things of the sort. How well well it is. And they're like, yeah, no, you don't meet the qualifications. You're not a very socially acceptable person. What happens then? They're doing the same thing that you're doing, the same thought process. So what happens at that point? Or denied a job because you're not fit for it. Your social behaviors are not very um, tolerable. What happens then? I really would like to see well, no, I wouldn't like to see, obviously. I'd like to hear like these people's responses to that. What happens when you're just the bad person in the scenario? I'll make a video at a certain point where I've really got to stop. I've said before how I've got to stop using the term evil and monstrous because I never believed, for the longest time, I've never believed in like mystical evil. Definitely not pure evil. I just used evil as a word to mean like something I greatly despised. But no, it's too mystified of a word. Yeah, I get, and also I'm probably gonna try and stop using the word good to refer to like people as well, because as far as I'm concerned by this point, there is no such thing as good and evil people. There isn't. There isn't. I've always known people are flawed. In reality, I've always believed that they're just flawed people and then severely flawed people. But as far as I'm concerned, it's really just, well, yeah, it's that. But the world is just made up of more beneficial people and more detrimental people. That's it. Talking with a different friend of mine recently, their opinion, the way they put it, we're all really just terrible people. It's really just a matter of scale and severity. Yeah, that's a very good way to put it. Don't think that I'm not blaming myself for any of this here. I know I brought up all these examples, but the biggest contradiction, I guess, of all here is that I've done a lot of the same things in subtle ways. Right now, I'm making a video, uploading it to YouTube, just literally talking about these issues. Right now, I don't know if I'm doing anything actually to fully prevent them. Help dismantle them. Speaking of one of those friends in relation to one of the more conservative friends I have in relation to alienation, over the summer, I didn't even fully realize this, but since I left Toronto, I didn't speak to them much. I live in a different country over text. or messaging. And we had a fight about it when I got here to Ottawa. Pretty much saying about how it felt like I was only talking about myself and not even having any sort of real interest in what had been happening in their life. And they were right. Not about me not having interest, but they were right about how the way I actually tried to communicate with them, I alienated them. For a whole summer. I did the same thing that my relatives did to me. Something that I was bloody livid at. I did the exact same fucking thing. In relation to my parents, I've talked about how in videos in the past, my major disagreements with them, why I ultimately left their house. At least, well, left the night that the kidnapping happened in Toronto. But in terms of the issues I was having with them encroaching upon my independence, my free will, my choices, things of the sort. I was incredibly mad at one of them. Well, I've brought up how one of them is heavy egotistical traits. Egotistical traits. They're histrionic. Schizoaffective disorder as well. The other one, incredibly arrogant, can also be very egotistical and narcissistic. And yet, in all the scenarios where I would try and discuss it with them and get into mass arguments and fights with them whilst I was living there, in relation to my ego, I did the same thing. I used my own sense of self to defend my rights and actions. I used my own ego. And I used verbal anger. Just the same as they had done to me. Pretty much. Now, people will argue and say, oh, well, a lot of times we say, especially in the leftist group, that we have no choice. This is for all the political circle, but I'm specifically speaking to leftists here. And in this regard, we say, well, yeah, you had no choice. You had to defend yourself in that regard. Defend your points, your justification for your moral actions, your philosophy's life. You had to justify that, and if they weren't listening, well, then verbal anger would have been the way to go, and you would have had no choice but to use your sense of self. I've really gotten past the point of a lot of the times when people say, like, oh, but we have no choice. I've really gotten past the point of honestly caring whether you had a choice or not, whether I had a choice or not. I'm done. I've gotten past the point of that being the issue for me. It's part of it, but not the major issue anymore. At the end of the day, you are doing the exact same thing. And if people aren't willing to actually acknowledge that in some regard and treat it as if they're completely in the right, or they're not in some way doing exactly what their opponent is doing, or someone that they're disputing with, well, I don't think the world and humanity is going to get anywhere. I really don't. I see this in every facet of life on the daily. People just doing bickering and bickering, and yet they're doing the exact same thing as the other person. And I have theories as to why exactly, at the end of the day, everyone's just doing the same thing. One major one in particular. But I've gotten past the point of, even in relation to people who are more communistic ideology or socialistic, will say that we're for equalized or close to equalized redistribution of wealth and or redistribution of resources in general, deprivatization of land in a more libertarian sense, or complete anarchistic sense, decentralization of governmental rule. And yet, we'll still operate in these systems. Well, because we have no choice. We need to make some sort of financial income. We need to have our savings so that we could actually survive in this world. Yeah, sure, I protest, but then I just go right back to doing whatever the hell I was doing before in terms of my job and my friends, my family, my social life, my place in the society that has been set up. I go right back to it. And because I didn't want to be a revolutionary. I didn't want to be ultimately a political organization leader. I had my own self-interests as well. Other than that, my own hobbies, my own my other selfish desires. As I do now believe that human beings are entirely selfish internally, but we do behave in selfless ways to obtain that selfishness. Which before I would have argued, if I had changed my stance before, would have been a good thing. But I don't know anymore. All right. It's 9:04 a.m. Other than what was going to be me trying out at that restaurant for the job today, which will now be next week, I also have finally a doctor's appointment. I have a physical with a general practitioner. I was finally able to get one after all these months. So let's hope that goes well enough. Yeah. See you later.